Go.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Killers, Kings, and Clowns. I'm Paul Whitcombe. I'm joined by Camillus Robinson and journalist Christine Holtz. Mobsters spend their waking hours hustling with loan sharking, gambling, and unions, but what happens when the mobster comes home for dinner? Or when a violent outfit hitman opens Christmas presents with his grandchildren? Today's guest has seen firsthand the price families pay living under the same roof as the mafia. We're talking today with Lisa Swan, ex-wife of Frank Calabrese Jr. Lisa, welcome, and we're happy to have you.
Hey, thanks, guys. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, you've got a very interesting story. You know, so many people think that the whole story of the mob is the rub-outs and the extortion, the payoffs, but you lived what it's like when the mob comes home.
Yes.
And that's
Yes,
truly something that's just not really explored very much. And that's what's so interesting about your story. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you met Frank?
I grew up in the next neighborhood from where Frank grew up. It was called Galwood. It was the little corner of Chicago. That's where all the city workers lived. That's where a lot of mafia lived. Mm-hmm. And in our neighborhood, it was mostly Italian. So everybody knew everybody, you know, and knew everybody's business. So we all used to hang out at this one bar called Eric and Me right in Elmwood Park. And that's where everybody would go before they'd go out to the discos and the dance clubs and all that. And I used to see Frank and I thought, wow, he's really cute, you know, and a lot of the girls would be like, don't even look because his family is crazy. And I'm like, why? And they're like, his father and this and that. And I'm like, but he seems like such a nice guy, you know, and I don't like to judge people by other, you know, people saying something to me because I don't make my decision that way. I unfortunately have to find out for myself.
You're a slow learner, is that what you're saying?
You know, and it was in the book, my famous last word. How bad could it be? You know, let's check it out. And, you know, Frank, oh my God, he was the sweetest guy. He was cute. He was funny. He just, you know, everything. And I really, really liked him. And, you know, we hit it off immediately. We went on 3 dates in a row in one weekend, and all my friends were like, what the hell is happening? You know, because usually I'm like, yeah, we're good, you know. And we hit it off. And I think, honestly, you know, looking back on it, we were like two really lost souls just looking for comfort. And
so, not to be rude at all, but about what age were you when you met Frank?
I met him when I was, I think, 23.
Okay, so you were pretty young.
No, of course.
And these clubs that you went to, were these clubs where there were other people that knew who the Calabrese family were and things like that?
Yeah. They, the Calabrese name, in hindsight, is the same as Smith for the Italians. It's a very popular name.
Right.
But when you say Frank Jr. and Frank Sr., then they know exactly who you're talking about, the Chinatown crew.
Okay.
And
right.
Frank Jr. was never that seedy kind of mafia kind of guy. You know, he was getting groomed by his dad.
Right.
And he didn't exude all of that crap.
Otherwise, so he didn't have a pinky ring and a horn of plenty around his neck?
No,
members only jacket and all that stuff?
No. It was funny though, because in the winter, you know, you'd look at everybody, you know, like at a family gathering or, you know, everyone in the neighborhood. I'm like, how does everybody have the same jacket?
Yeah.
You know, I guess that stuff just doesn't ride right in the truck. I don't know, but yeah. I mean,
a lot of bumps downtown.
Yeah, it bounces right out the door. But that was normal in my neighborhood. So that was normalized as I was growing up. So, you know, there's some things that are very normal that other people are like, oh my God, you know. And that goes for everybody. You know, it was that neighborhood. That's how they were.
What were the cross streets where that neighborhood was? Because I'm not sure I'm familiar with that.
So do you know North Avenue and Harlem Avenue?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Right there.
Okay, right, all right.
So that Sears that used to be on North and Harlem, I think they've knocked it down now. That was my very first job, $2.49 an hour. That was 1975.
It's good money in 1975.
Don't start doing the math, guys. Don't do it. And so I was on the Chicago side and Frank was on the side. Then we had River Forest and Oakland. So that was the four corners of that.
So you had the 3 dates in one weekend. Where does it go from there, Lisa?
Oh my God, it just took off. It was just, you know, so our first date, oh my God, it was horrible. Well, it wasn't horrible, but so the first date, I was all excited. We went to the Italian American Club Christmas dinner.
On Taylor in
Yes.
right. Okay.
And so, but I think the party was out in Oak Brook or something. It was at one of the really nice venues.
Okay.
And so I bought a red suede dress and high heels, and I was wearing the red lipstick, and I had the big blonde hair. And Frank hates red lipstick, so that was my first whoops.
Apparently, it didn't turn him off too bad.
No,
No, apparently not. And then when I got to the party, I knew a lot of people there from my neighborhood. So Frank kind of took off, you know, because all the guys have to hang and talk and hug and kiss and all that. So I sat outside on a chair, and I was with one of my girlfriends that I met there. And I said, I want to see how long it's going to take for him to realize I'm not at the table. And it took about 2 hours.
setting a bad precedent.
And I'm like, okay. And then the next date we had, we went downtown Chicago, and we wanted to go ice skating, and there was a private party there, and there was the outdoor ice skating, and Frank's like, come on, just follow my lead. I'm like, huh? Now I grew up white collar, you know, honest, you know, you don't take that piece of candy from those big boxes of candy from when you were a kid. You do everything right. And he got us into this private party. He just starts talking with some of the people. Hey, how you doing? Blah, 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 blah. And we were skating and eating on this party's dime. Not only that, we invited another couple. So that was our second date. I'm like, wow, this is exciting, because I never did anything like that.
The life of crime begins in
right. It's a draw.
And then the Sunday, I got invited to Frank Sr.'s house for dinner. And everyone was like, whoa, third date, she's going to the big house. Yep.
Oh, and you didn't have any trepidation about that at all?
Well, so when you grow up in that kind of neighborhood, you kind of, you know who's a loan shark, you know who's a bookie, you know, and that's normal. That was so normal. And that's all I thought his dad was. I had no idea to what extent I was walking into.
Sure. Well, how was he? What was your first impressions of Frank Sr.?
Oh my God, he was so happy, and he was just, you know, very friendly and talkative, and I'm like, wow, he's really nice. But that was that Jekyll Hyde thing.
So to put this into, that would have been like the early 80s, late 70s, but around that time period.
That was like the end of 86.
And okay, so mid 80s. So by that point, you know, if you look at the trial, Frank is already well established. Frank Sr. would have been a made guy by then, and he's already he and Nick have left a sort of a wake behind them. I mean, so
Oh,
they're,
yeah.
I mean, you're meeting him,
But
he's
I didn't know
smiling
about
and
that.
no, of course not. But so this man, you're meeting him, and just so for people watching, he was at that time, he was nobody knew at that time that it was a killer in addition to being a loan shark.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was happy-go-lucky Italian father.
Yeah, I mean, he just seemed so happy, and his sons, and down the road, what I realized is everybody was faking it. And I came from this teeny tiny little Italian family. My grandmother and mother came from Trieste. They were the Northern Italian, not the Sicilian.
Right.
My grandmother always said, Sicilians aren't real Italians,
She spit on the floor. My grandfather used to spit on the floor.
Yeah. And it was crazy. And so, they had the big family, they had all the noise, the music, the food. My family, I didn't. We didn't have any of that. My grandmother, she'd rather open the jar of ragu and here you go. And I used to hang at all my girlfriends' houses on Sundays so I could learn how to cook, make the meatballs, do all that stuff. I had to go other places.
Ah. Wow.
And
So,
yeah.
You're just robbing other people's gravy, huh?
Yeah.
I took the best of the best, and there you go.
Cheers.
Yeah.
So now you've met the big guy and everything seems fine.
Right.
No red flags or anything?
No, but Frank and Kurt and Nikki would say stuff on the side, poking fun, oh, she's seen Dad's good side, and here I give everybody a chance to prove themselves, because I don't want to go by hearsay, because, that's not always right.
Right.
Did there come a point before you knew the life that Frank Jr. was living that you saw more in Frank Sr. than you knew was there?
I didn't. I got a weird vibe from him. But I looked to the upside of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then it started, falling apart, and then the evil comes through, and then you're like, holy crap.
And you being an outsider, he had trained himself sort of to mask a lot of that. That's what those guys were masters of. He's not going to come out and be like, I'm a gangster, you better not act up in my house.
No, he was very, and of course he had his quirks about him, that he liked things a certain way, and he had to sit at the head of the table, and he had to have the big folded napkin and all that. And I'm like, all right, cool. That's what you do. But he just seemed very jovial, just very cool until he wasn't. And I got to see that firsthand with myself.
When was that turning point that you started to see his kind of true colors?
When he would always keep Frank busy. So when Frankie and I were dating, I would never see Frankie till like 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. So I'd be sitting around. I'm like, what the hell? And I used to give Frank a hard time. And he's like, well, I'm doing stuff for my dad. I'm like, yeah, but what about us? What are we doing here? And so he would try to get away from his dad. And his dad would just, come in with the claw. And then Frankie started taking me on his runs. So I'd be in the car in the winter with the heat on while Frank goes in the back door of whatever restaurant, picking up, envelopes, and then coming back to the car just so I could spend time with them. And then Frank's dad would, like I said, just eat up all his time. And his dad would just make demands on him that were just ridiculous. I mean, they were demands that nobody could have any kind of relationship or have a family with these ridiculous demands. Like sometimes 2 a.m, get a phone call, gotta go. I gotta go do this. I gotta fly to Florida, blah, blah, blah. I was like, what the heck? You know, and these are all things that I did not know. And then when Frank Sr. used to start showing up at the house, 6 a.m., and I'd answer the door like, what? And then he'd come with the donuts, big box of donuts. He was trying, yeah. So he was trying to catch Frank Jr. at home, and Frank Jr. would say, tell him I'm not home. So I'd have to be at the front door with this monster. And then that's how he grew to hate me, because he knew I was lying to him.
You were also a competition. You know, if he
I
wanted
was
that
big
control,
competition.
you know, yeah.
Because once we had our first, we had Kelly, Frankie, he was dealing with cocaine obsession, selling it and doing it. And, you know, here he had this little daughter that he just loved like crazy. And he wanted to get away from everything, but his dad was just relentless. So, yeah, that was a big struggle. Big struggle. And, you know, and I was too naive to know about the drugs until we moved to, we were in Melrose Park, which is another Italian neighborhood. And I would find rolled up $20 bills. And here's me, what's this for? I had no idea. Because I didn't do drugs. I wasn't, you know, into that. And he'd say, oh, that was so-and-so's. I think he's got a cocaine problem. I'm like, oh, wow, well, he should talk to somebody. So naive. And then I kept finding them. And then the kids' straws would be, you know, running out. And then I'd find them outside cut. And then I put 2 and 2 together. I'm like, uh-oh. And, you know, and then I would find bags of cocaine in the house, and I'd flush it down the toilet. Thousands of dollars.
Ooh.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
Lisa, at what point did you start to perceive any danger when Frank would leave at 2 in the morning or fly to Florida on the spur of the moment? Was there ever where you thought, you know, he could be involved in something dangerous, or no?
At that point, I tried to separate myself. I was the only one working. Still held my job down at the Board of Trade. I had the kids, and I had to focus on those things. Whatever Frank did, I just kind of pieced out on the thought of him, because I couldn't handle it, and it was out of my control. And I had to focus on Kelly and Anthony and just getting us by.
Okay. Was he helping you support the family?
When he was able to, but his cocaine addiction got so bad, you know, he couldn't function. And he did the cocaine to escape his father.
So you were learning gradually about this dysfunctional relationship between dad and son?
Yeah. The whole family. So when I first met them, and our first Christmas, it was tons of people, tons of food, gifts. Everyone was, you know, happy, this and that. And I'm like, wow, this is great. And then the next Christmas, it was not so great. And then the next year got even worse. So I'd say about my 3rd year in, everyone was just exchanging gifts, like in the parking lot. Here you go, here you go, here you go. And not spending time together. So it was just, you know, showing up, hey, I gave you a gift. You know, and it was just, everything was just, nobody wanted to go to Frank and Diane's house, because everyone had to be, you know, you had to be on your toes. And then Frank would take his boys into the basement and go talk. And, you know, I'm like, you know, this is bullshit. We're here to celebrate Christmas. We don't even want to be here. Your food is mediocre. And, you know, you just want to go home.
So when y'all got married, you know, I've read Frank talked about your wedding, and I was, you know, you think of mob weddings, but that wasn't exactly y'all's experience, was it? You know, with these huge people, and I mean, it was good size, but But Frank Jr. didn't shell out. I mean, Frank Sr. didn't shell out for a big wedding for his son like a lot of them do.
That's so funny you bring that up because I wrote that down here in my notes. So I came up to this hotel room, and I think I wrote like six pages of just like, oh yeah, what about this? Oh yeah, what about this? So for the wedding, I originally wanted an outdoor wedding, and I wanted to do it in Daneta House, which is in Wheaton, which is a dry region. And we were trying to get that, and it was getting expensive, and there was a ton of construction, and that was a drought year. So there was a ton of dust, and it was just a bad idea. And Frank got mad. Frank's dad wanted us to have it at Al's in Cicero. And I'm like, I don't want to fucking have it in Cicero. I want to do the outdoor thing because it'll be pretty. And I didn't want that mobbish wedding.
It's your wedding.
Yeah. So we ended up canceling the caterer, who was my best friend's sister, and she wanted to charge us a deposit. Well, Frank had a fucking baby, and he's like, I'm going to burn their garage down. I'm like, oh, hold it. We can't be doing that. And
so you resolve disputes.
Oh my God. And I was just like, at that point, I just said, fuck it, whatever you want to do. So that was my wedding, was kind of the beginning of the end.
That's often the case.
Well, yeah, right? Yeah. But this was just like, they picked out everything, and I'm like, okay, whatever. I didn't care anymore. I just wanted it over with.
Just that control.
Yeah. Do you know I never even ordered my pictures?
Ooh.
Ouch.
Yeah. He just had to have control over everything.
And I never changed my last name either.
No.
Oh, would you like to back up to that?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Would you like to back up to Frank's dad was already not digging me because I was taking away his number one son. And so I had to meet Frank at the courthouse to get our marriage license. Do you know what's coming up?
Please. Go ahead.
So I meet him there after work, and he's got this look on his face like he just ran over my new puppy. And I go, what's wrong? And he goes, I need you to sign this. And I'm like, oh, sign what? Miss Naive. And it's a blank prenuptial agreement. Blank. So I could have been giving away kids and not knowing. And I said, I don't understand. What is this for? And he goes, it's for my father. And I said, and if I don't sign it? He goes, please just sign it. And you could tell he was so mad at himself that he let his dad control him and make me sign these papers. That's supposed to be kind of a cool day for you when you go get your marriage license.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was fucking shit for me. I'm like, I'm like stressing. I'm like, oh my God, this is nuts. I can't even tell anybody because this is how crazy this is.
And he had nothing to say about it other than just please sign it. And
he couldn't. He couldn't. He had no input. He couldn't say, yeah, forget this. No, it had to be done. And I'm like, wow, this is awesome. I should have ran then, but I didn't.
Did you ever see an incident where your husband disappointed his father?
Oh, yeah.
What was that like?
Oh, when somebody like if you watch Evel Knievel and you don't know if he's going to make it over the 13 buses on his bike and you hold your breath, that's what it's like.
In your home, this kind of thing happened in your home?
Everywhere.
Oh my gosh.
Because this guy would go off at nothing. I remember once we were at our senior's house and we were watching TV and I'm like looking at my clock like, we gotta go. and because I just wanted to get out of there. And Frank Sr. dropped the remote to the TV, and it must have hit the some button where it was one of those loud channels. And he gets up and he goes, "See what you made me do?" What? I mean, just bizarro stuff like that. And I would just look at Frank and he'd go, like, "Don't say nothing, don't say nothing." Because sometimes I have a habit of saying, "What the hell is that?" You know, but you really had to watch.
Yeah, you know that, and you at one point, you at some point came to know that he was really physical with Frank Jr. I mean, did you?
Yeah.
I mean, how did that come about? That you realize that your father-in-law is beating his son?
Well, Frank used to tell me about when he was younger, him and his brother Kurt, you know, and I was like, well, is he trying to teach you right from wrong? Or, you know, there's a better way to do that, of course. But I remember some days when I would come home from work and I would see Frank Sr.'s truck out front, and you know when you just, all the wind is out of your sails, you're like, oh no, it's just, you know, doom and gloom. And I'd walk in the house and I'd see the side of Frank's face all red. And he did it once in front of my daughter Kelly.
How old was Kelly at the time?
Kelly at the time, I think, was maybe 4 or 5, but she was so perceptive. And she called, she's like, "Daddy, are you okay?" And then Frank Sr. tells my Frank, just play along with me. He goes, "Oh, don't worry, Kelly, we're just playing, we're just wrestling." That's what he used to do.
I think it's easy looking back in time, and for people who are not involved to say, well, if all this is going on, why did you stick around? But these things didn't happen all at one time, and so you said, oh, well, this is the situation, I'm just going to leave it. It was sort of over the course of years, these things unfolded, and you know, if one odd thing happens, it's a one-off, and then it goes several months and something else happens. It's easy to look back and say this is everything that was going on, but I think there was Frank Sr. was probably pretty good at manipulating the situation. So when these things arose, you knew he was bad, but he could spit it out enough that it wasn't just a reign of terror all the time where you just had to escape with the children. I mean, he
no, but it got
in the beginning.
More in the beginning, no, but then boy, he showed his true colors quick.
Right.
You know, and I remember when we were first married, and I think I don't know if we had Kelly and Anthony, but I had my first mob sit down with Frank Sr.
Tell us about that.
What was that?
So he always used to show up at his first wife, Dolores. That's Frank's mom. And I love her to death. She was the best cook in the world. And Frank Sr. always used to go there because his wife was mediocre at cooking. She couldn't hold a match to Dolores, not even on a good day. And it was a Sunday, so we went by Dolores for dinner. And of course, Sr. shows up. And, you know, he's all, oh, hi with the kids, this and that. And then he tells me and Frank Jr., I need you guys to come downstairs. And I'm like, no, why are we doing that? We're about to eat. And so, you know, it was like leading the lamb to the fucking slaughter. So I sit down and I go, so what's going on? And then he gets this, just morphs into this different person. And, you know, he's got his glasses down to here. And he's like, you know, I need to talk to you about you running your mouth and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, what? And I hear that you talk bad about the family and this and that. I go, and, you know, right away, here's me. Who's telling you that? You know, and I'm getting pissed. And he's like, it doesn't matter. I go, yeah, it kind of does because it's a lie. And he's like, yeah, well, we don't do that in this family and blah, blah, blah. And I'm looking at my husband He's looking straight. He won't even look at me. He won't acknowledge me because he knew he had no input. He was just there, you know, to witness everything. And at the end of this conversation, like now my head is swimming. And I'm like, first of all, this is a lie. Second of all, you know, this is what you do. You take me down into the basement. It's a sit down.
Mm-hmm.
And third of all, when he finishes talking, there goes the switch. Okay, let's go upstairs and eat now. And I'm like, eat? I want to throw up right now because I'm upset. And, you know, what the fuck? My husband won't even vouch for me.
So you got whistled in pretty much.
Yeah.
I sure did.
And he humiliated your husband in front of you.
Always.
And you get told this is the way it is.
Yep.
By bad Frank.
Yeah.
And that was it? And then the switch flips and it's time for supper?
Yeah, he goes, let's eat. And he puts that fake grin on his face. And I went upstairs and Dolores looked at me and you could, I mean, this is why I'm not good at poker. I am so transparent. You know, what I'm thinking or feeling is all over my face. And I didn't eat. I was like, oh my God. And I wanted to say, if you thought I was talking bad about you before, well, I'm going to be talking bad about you now.
Now, when that's happening, I mean, it's upsetting and it's disorienting. But I mean, is there fear too? You're in this basement, and this guy is in full mob mode. I mean, that's father-in-law or not, he's a terrifying guy.
That's the first time that I got intimidated by him. And I got intimidated because Frank Jr. didn't come to my rescue. You know, he just sat there. And it's like I was on my own.
Right.
And I'm like, it's not cool.
Well, you used a word earlier, Lisa, that really caught my attention, and that was evil.
Yes.
At some point, the situation transitioned from uncomfortable or even obnoxious to evil.
Yeah.
You know when that word first became the one that came to mind about what was going on?
So the evil came more back in 2007 with the trial, when I learned that I had a murderer at my dinner table, you know, and I had a murderer who took my kids out for ice cream. You know, I'm not cool with that. I am not cool with that. The evil started coming out when they all got indicted in 95. And I was at, I remember that day like it was yesterday when they showed up at my house. And the evil showed when we were in the lawyer's office after they all got indicted and before they started turning themselves in. And Frank's dad was in Frank Jr.'s face, you know, like this, in the lawyer's office, that, you know, you better not say this and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, this man, Frank Jr., is going to be stripped of everything. And you sorry ass are just worried about yourself. Mm-hmm. Not your kids, not your grandkids, not nobody else, but you're just worried about your fucking sentence. And that's when the evil just blossomed for me.
Right. You know,
I'll never ever forget that. There's some things that are just burned in my memory that just, they don't go away. Therapy, they don't go away. Drinking, they just don't go away.
After that moment, when Frank's leaning over the desk with his finger in your husband's face,
yeah,
did something shift in your mind about what you had to do, or your perception of what was going on? Did you walk out of there a different person?
I was so mad, and my husband was just, at that point, I hated my own husband. I hated him. You know, I tried to divorce him for 2 years prior to everything because of the cocaine, because of everything else. And I mean, it was just a turbulent marriage. And I hated him and I felt bad for him at the same time. You know, that's such a struggle. But you know, I just, it was just crazy. And I just, you know, I wanted him gone. I wanted Frank Jr. gone because I had to make a plan. And I had to be very, very patient until Frank Jr. could turn himself in. And so I just worked, focused on Kelly and Anthony. I went through the motions. I couldn't talk to anybody in the neighborhood. I couldn't tell anybody what had gone on, what was going on, what will go on. I had to be silent. But everyone in the neighborhood hated me when I finally divorced Junior, because I had to send the papers to jail because he wouldn't sign them before he went to jail.
That had to be an increasingly lonely time, because like you said, you have it's a small family. You married into this family, and not only were things so chaotic with your in-laws, but Frank Jr. was not around much because he was either helping his father, and then later on as the cocaine started, he was, I mean, that just became your reality. So while that's happening,
the cocaine, and then after Frank Jr. stole the money from his dad, I was moving Frank Jr. from hotel to hotel, and Frank Jr. would jump out of a window and leave me at the front door with Frank Sr.
Out the window?
Out the window of a second-story house.
Oh my gosh.
Because Frank Sr. wanted me to set up Frank Jr. for a meet. So Frank Sr. thought I was going to be on his side, which he was mistaken. So he's like, I need to know what day he's going to be home in the morning. And I said, okay. I go, Monday. And he's like, okay. He shows up at 5 a.m. with Dolores.
Any donuts?
With the box of fucking donuts. And I went to the door, and you could see Dolores did not want to be there. She wanted no part of this, but you know, he always needs a witness. And I said, I'm sorry, he's not here. He got that look in his eye, that glassy, you know, I just want to strangle you look. I can't explain it. I can't explain it, but it's just like he changes and he goes, what do you mean he's not here? I said, he left. I don't know where he went. He goes, but I thought you said he was going to be here. I go, well, he's not. And he told my sister-in-law, which she would kill me that I'm saying this, but I don't care. He told my sister-in-law, I washed my hands of Lisa. I'm like, okay, because
you should be so lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wash it right out of my hair. Yeah.
So, but while all this is going on, the cocaine and the mob and the this, that, and the other, you've got 2 children, and you are the only one in position to be taking care of them, and you're the only one with a job. So you're supporting your household, you're supporting your children, you're working a regular job, and you're also having to do the best you can at times to hustle around and hide your husband from your murderous father-in-law.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm all about multitasking.
Right, Jesus, Lisa, that's a hell of a lot on a person.
Yeah, well, so, yeah, it was a lot, but, you know, I did what I felt like I had to do for my kids. So my kids will tell you to this day, I mean, we're able to joke about it, but Kelly's like, she would ask me, Mom, are we poor? Because I'd have $10. And I'm like, all right, either we get Happy Meals or we put gas in the car. That's where I was. Mm-hmm. You know, there was no thick envelope coming from anybody when Frankie went to jail. I didn't get shit. I got nothing. Which, you know, all right. So I lost my house. I lost my car. I had no telephone. It was shut off. I had to put my kids in a wagon and bring them to the gas station on 76th and North Avenue to make a phone call.
Senior's sitting on millions in cash. It hits
Millions.
Millions. Millions in cash that nobody knows about, hidden away, nobody could trace. You know, it's all over Chicago. Is millions of dollars.
However, Frank Sr. sent, I don't know if Frankie mentioned Johnny Marino was one of his best friends back in the day.
Right.
And Johnny Marino used to do stuff for Frank's dad, you know, and some of it was just like carpentry stuff, whatever, you know, I don't know what else he did. He sent Johnny Marino to my house, and it was like a ransom note. Give me your bills and the kids' school fees, and I will pay them. And it was written so cryptic. And I'll never forget this. Johnny comes up to my steps, and I'm like, hey, Johnny, what's up? This and that, because Johnny's kids used to play with mine, and I was friends with Johnny's wife. And I read this note, and I go, who's this from? He goes, don't ask me that. I go, John, who's this note from? He goes, Lise, I can't say. And I crumpled it up. I'm like, well, you could take this note, and they can shove it up their ass.
I bet he didn't deliver that message.
How did you tell your kids what was going on? Where was Dad?
So every night, I'd put my kids in the tub, because I used to get up at like 3:30 in the morning for work, because I had to be down there before the markets opened.
Right.
And I'd have Kelly in the bathtub, and she'd be crying. She's like, when's Daddy gonna come home? And I said, well, and I never talked bad about Frank to the kids, because my kids didn't need more trauma. And I said, you know what? Daddy's a good guy who made a bad mistake. So he's in a special school to learn about what to do better next time.
Oh, okay.
What do I say? Oh, yeah, he's, you know, scrubbing dishes for 40 cents an hour. I can't.
No, I suppose you couldn't.
No, and my kids were getting teased at school. They were getting teased because the parents would talk about, you know, because this was big news. I mean, in my neighborhood, everyone knew if you were taking a shit. I mean, it was that close-knit. And, you know, there were kids making fun of my kids. My daughter would come home crying because she'd be left out of stuff, because they're like, oh, your daddy's in jail, blah, 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 blah. So from that neighborhood, I moved about 30 miles west. I was close to the border of Wisconsin. It was, I don't know if you're familiar with Cary, Illinois.
Sure.
Yeah.
Loved it. I saw no Italians. There was nothing out there, and I was as happy as a clam.
So nobody living the life out there.
Oh, no. No, and, you know, it took me a little while to blend in.
I just have this picture in my mind of Steve Martin mowing the lawn in his suit.
Yeah.
You know, where you're mowing the lawn and you're
right. Yeah, that's one of my favorite movies, by the way.
You know, Lisa, there's something I just have to ask you. And the last 50 minutes have gone by so fast. I've got so many things.
Holy cow, already?
There's so many things we want to ask you, but this is one I have to ask. And if we run out of time, I hope we can do this again, because
I'm all about doing it, having you know, as many times as you want, Lisa. I mean, this is great.
Oh, I would love it. This is like therapy for me, guys. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Get our bill.
Yeah.
Right.
But what I have
insurance?
to ask you, this is a fun one. You know, and maybe your answer is nothing, but were there any aspects of being married to the mob that were pleasant and that were advantages that you tell us about?
Absolutely. All right.
Here we go.
So we always got a good table at the restaurant.
Yeah.
We always got the best concert tickets. We always got the best sports tickets. We used to go to a house in Melrose Park where they had hot clothes. Everything was 50% off. And by the way, always in my size. So I had the best leather suits. I had everything. Yeah, and I think that's where it ends.
Yeah, well, that's
Right.
really a pretty good list, though.
Yeah.
Those were the highlights, you know, and learning how to cook from Frank's grandmother
Mm-hmm.
and his mom. Because I'm all about cooking. I'm all about comfort and all of that. And it relaxes me to cook, you know, the bigger, the better. So those were the highlights.
So the shopping in the basement thing, that you see that in mob movies all the time. I think it's a big Goodfellas. That's real. Huh?
It is so real. I could not watch Sopranos up until a couple years ago because the writing was so brilliant. You know, just with the family and the women and just the culture was just like, holy cow. I couldn't watch it.
Right. Wow.
Too real.
I could not watch. I've been watching it recently, and I'll watch it, you know, with whoever happens to be there, and I'll just bust out laughing. I'm like, oh my God, that is so true. A lot of it, yeah.
Any other pop culture mob things that you think are realistic, like The Sopranos?
Yeah, so, you know, all of them hanging out together and their conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Those are real.
Yeah.
The house. So the house that Tony Soprano drives up to, that was like my father-in-law's house. My father-in-law looked just like Tony Soprano. John Cass from the Sun-Times did a side-by-side. You got to look it up. It's crazy.
He does. He does look like Gandolfini. I can see John Cass writing something like that. I can see John Cass doing that. Yeah.
Totally. It was made my day when I saw that. The other things with that culture is the houses, the way they're decorated, and how the lawns are, and those spiral bushes out front, and then you got the light sensors and the cameras. And then you usually got the statue right in the bushes.
Right.
Absolutely.
You know, because everybody gets holy when they need to.
Well, sure.
Yeah.
That's what the festivals are for, right?
Where were some of the best places that you would go and get the best tables? What were the restaurants that you guys frequented?
Oh, we would go down to, all right, now I got to remember. I know there was one out west, and that's when the big earthquake happened in LA, and we're watching on big screen TV, and just this food just kept coming out. I'll have to think of the name. I'll have to find out the name. We would always go to Armin's right in the neighborhood.
Right.
Sure. Yeah.
Armin's Pizza. Yeah.
You know, just the best artichokes, ribs, and pizza. Oh my God. God, I could go for some of that right now.
Me too.
Some of the ones on Taylor Street that we would go to, you know, it was just carte blanche. You just sit and everything just comes out for you.
Yeah. Were there other people in the life that you socialized with, or did you stick with just the Calabrese bunch?
So Johnny Marino and his wife, you know, when Johnny was in good graces. Sometimes Kurt and Angela, my sister-in-law and brother-in-law. You know, it was a small group. Yeah. There was no big group. And I think, as you know, Frank and I were married, Frank wanted to socialize less and less because everything was it was all messed up.
Because of his father.
Yeah, so Frankie and I, we kind of lived together separately, you know, before he went away. I couldn't deal with it.
Yeah.
And I just focused on the kids, and I just focused on trying to keep it normal for them because, you know, Kelly said, Mom, I had no idea we were poor.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, Kelly, you know, and she would ask me sometimes with those big brown eyes, she'd go, Mommy, are we poor? And I go, Kelly, we're rich in personality. And then she'd be like, okay. Yeah, that was tough.
But it's a real tribute to you to get those kids through not just the poverty, but the loss of a dad and the trauma and the living in fear all the time, that could not have been easy to bring up healthy kids.
Mm-hmm.
No, and God, I got so lucky with my kids. Do they still have trauma now? Yeah, they have issues, of course, more than the normal kids do. But you know, they're well-rounded kids. They didn't really do drugs. They, you know, like the teenagers do. Oh, I got drunk, blah blah blah, which is fine. I want them to experience that and get it out of the way, because they're going to realize it's not a big thing. It's not important. And it's, you know, down the road, it gets stupid. And my kids are awesome.
What are
really awesome.
Did they stick around here? Did they head somewhere else? What did they do with their lives?
We all came out here in 2002 because, you know, I got back with Frank. Because when he came out of jail, man, he was perfect. He was built, he was buff, he was clear. And, you know, I looked like something the cat dragged in. I was stick a fork in me, I'm done. And he just wanted his family back so bad. And I thought, okay, I mean, I did it for the kids because the kids loved him so much. And they just wanted to, you know, get back with him. And I thought, okay, let's try again and see where it goes.
I think what you're dealing with, and you've spoken to it a lot, is Frank is a good guy in my interactions and what people say, but he's a child of abuse, and so a lot of the things came after. I mean, abuse leaves such an imprint on people growing up that way. So even, you know, he's a big guy who is being, you know, mob collections or whatever story you want to paint, he was still coming out of a home of abuse, and that left marks into adulthood. So, I mean, whatever process one has to go through to become the person they're supposed to be, he just y'all had a rough road of his path.
Well, and his dad always used to tell him, you're too nice. You're too nice. Like if somebody didn't have money to pay up for whatever they owed to Frank Sr., Frank Jr. would put his own money in because he didn't want anything to happen. And then his dad used to berate him because he'd find out, Frank Sr. found out about everything somehow. It was crazy. It's like he had his little witchy senses on. He knew.
What kind of loan shark pays with his own money? I mean, you're just not made for that business if that's the way you are.
Well, because Frank Jr. was picking up for his dad.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, obviously.
And Frank Jr. was a nice guy and didn't want anybody to get hurt.
Yeah. He didn't give a damn if it was Junior's money.
Yeah, and Frank Sr., he was treacherous, and people knew that. So, you know,
it's kind of drawing a blank here, but I think that you look at what you've been through, and you look at Senior, and it's we look at him now and we're like, gosh, how can anybody get in that family? But I think you've done a really good job saying, well, things started out great. He was 9, he was informal, and it was just this slow burn to get to where it was. And you really, through it all, listening to you talk now, you carried you protected your children through it. You held yourself up. I mean, you got through all these things, and now at the end of it, it sounds like y'all have come together. I mean, really, it's.
So so when we got back together,
How was that right after prison?
There was too much history, negative history, and you know, Frank, he hadn't forgiven himself for everything that happened. So he was always trying to do good. And I'm like, you know, just because someone did you a favor 10 years ago, you don't have to keep paying them back. It's okay. You need to forgive yourself before you do anything of everything that happened. Yeah, it happened. Unfortunately, we were in it. But, you know, you're a person too, and you need to take care of yourself. You know, and that's something I had to get over with the kids. I had to forgive myself for letting all that shit happen. you know, because when you look back at something, you're like, oh, well, I probably could have done that better, or shit, I should have left, you know, when I had the chance, blah, 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 you know, but I was such an emotional zombie.
Yeah.
That I did nothing. I just made sure my kids were taken care of. And don't get me wrong, Frank loved those kids. Loves those kids to this day. Sure. And he's very sorry for everything that happened. But, you know, you got to move forward. And Frank and I are best of friends. And, you know, we're really, really good as friends.
Lisa, on behalf of Camillus and Christine, I want to invite you to come back, because this has been so much fun.
I'd love to.
You know, we can't learn this by getting on the internet. This is the kind of stuff that only someone like you can tell people. We always try to keep it to an hour just because attention spans are short. But we would definitely like to have you back again.
Yes.
And it's been a really,
I'd love to do that.
Oh, great.
Yeah,
great.
I'll definitely be in touch, and we'll get you. And as soon as this, you know, we'll post to YouTube quickly. And as soon as we do, I'll let you know, and I'll send you the links so you can show it around, and you know, everybody, we'll get it to you quick. Just do a little touch up, and this is great, Lisa. Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you guys. It's my pleasure. There's tons more.
I bet.
You have no idea.
No, we don't.
No, you don't.
We'll see you again soon.
All right. Sounds good, guys. Thank you so much. And you guys have a great day.
Thank you. Take care.
Okay. Bye.